survival of the fittest. But what if the real secret to thriving isn't about muscles or self-reliance, but actually the courage to be needy? The kind of needy that knocks on a door and asks, "Can I borrow your ladder?" In my case, this ladder. Bet you were wondering what it was doing on stage, right? That was me 7 years ago when I first moved to Worthing, fresh-faced from London. I'd had a roller blind fitted in my bedroom, but quite quickly, it just kept falling down, landing on my head. Like, really annoying. And after another attempt of trying to sort it out via a chair, a stool, the window ledge, and a hanger, I just thought, this can't go on. I need a solution. I'd had a job to convince my landlord to put the blinds up in the first place. But bedtime was looming. So I thought, I've got 3 choices here. Go and buy my own 6-foot ladder. Bedtime. Pricey. Call my landlord and ask him to come and sort it out. Well, he hadn't wanted it up in the first place. Or 3, talk to a neighbour and ask to borrow theirs. It was 5 steps to my opposite neighbour David's house, the most likely candidate to have a ladder on my floor. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a deep breath. And then a bit of a pause. Surely it would be better to own my own ladder. Surely it would be better to be safe in my independence island, not needy, not reliant on anyone, not troubling anyone. But then I remembered, you can't afford it, it's bedtime. I rang the bell. So why the hesitation? Well, growing up, I was in care, and I learned early on to rely on myself. Belonging wasn't an easy thing for me. Add to that, being a black woman, and in every space that I existed, I was often the first or the only, and always having to put my best foot forwards and only really ever reveal my polished edge. So independence was kind of like a shield of armour, a battle cry. Great on the one hand, but the flip side of that was a place where I often felt quite alone, and if I'm honest, often scared. Society tells us that to be well respected, we need to be strong and independent. But here's the thing, research is showing the cracks. The World Health Organization says that loneliness is a global public health concern, that it's as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And that same report said that almost half of UK adults reported feeling lonely. Well, that's like every other person in this room. And when people look at someone like me, they often see a confident, well-connected, comfortable in her skin human being. But that's not my full truth. And I think that that's the same for many of us here. For so long, my motto was, I am an island. There is no plan B, and I can only rely on me. Well, that was until last year. I turned 50 last year. But that's the point where you're supposed to say, nah. Too late. Too late. I turned 50 last year and I hosted a party at Coast Cafe just along on the beachfront. If you're visiting, do go and see it tomorrow. It's fabulous. And the day before, I ended up crying with a friend, convinced that no one was going to turn up. I'd got this island narrative in my mind and it was running rampant. But something changed when I stood on the rooftop of Coast Cafe. Picture this. It was a beautiful sunny evening, a bit like today, but warmer. And there was a glorious sunset playing out over the sea. There was a lovely, gentle breeze. There was R&B music pumping out the speakers. There were people, strangers, dancing on the beach to music that I love and that I'd ordered. and there was a lovely Greek buffet arrayed for everyone to eat. And there were people. There were people from every era of my life. It was a bit like a scrapbook played out through people. There were people, get this, right up to the lady that I met in the nail salon bar the day before. We were having a bit of a giggle about parking in Worthing, and turned out when I turned up, she was helping to host the evening. But what most amazed and touched me was the number of people on that rooftop that were from Worthing. You see, somehow in 7 years of being here, I had managed to build relationships that ran deep and had enabled me to drop masks that I'd been carrying for decades. There was a woman that I met 10 years ago when I was first checking out Worthing, my first and most beautiful tether to Worthing. There was the sanctuary of women that I met through choir. There was my church family, a white majority church, who'd had the courage to make this black woman part of their leadership team. There was the business community, where we have meetings in our lounge, like very un-London. But what moved and amazed me, like such a beautiful moment, was when my neighbour, David, owner of the ladder, stood up and gave an impromptu speech offering words of affection and affirmation. You see, 7 years ago, when I'd had the courage to cross the corridor and ring on his doorbell, David threw open his door and generously lent me his ladder, not once, but about half a dozen times, because the wretched thing just kept falling down. Before he finally said, would it be better if I kept the ladder and he knocked on my door when he needed it? And I realised in that moment on the rooftop that this ladder is a symbol of so many things, that it's a symbol of a community that is holding me steady, that it's a symbol of what happens when we get vulnerable and build bridges to support each other, that it's a reminder that as community, we can be each other's first response team. And I had to ask myself, how did this happen? Well, when I moved to Worthing, I made a really conscious decision to be more open, to talk more deeply with people, and to be a little bit more vulnerable. And I really think that Worthing's community spaces fully enabled that for me. I walked up and down the prom where a nod turned into a smile, turned into a bit of a chat. Things like spaces like our pier, the gardens, cafes where tables are scrunched close together, encouraging conversation, our gardens, our choirs, our churches, all of those spaces where real talk and deep talk can and did happen. I made an effort to put down my phone and cross the threshold and knock on neighbours' doors and invite them across mine for dinner. Exactly, radical, right? I got really intentional about life beyond the front door. I'm not an expert, I'm still learning. And here's the thing, building community is both hard and easy. You don't have to start a street party or have some big movement to make it happen. Community is actually built by simple things. And one of the ways that I try and remember that is this, just talk, T-A-L-K. So T, trust people. It's my belief, well, it's not even my belief, we're hardwired for connection. And most people are trustworthy and want to connect. A, act simply. Start with a nod, start with a smile, and talk about the weather if you have to. L, lend, but more importantly, borrow. And I'm going to loop back round to that. I don't get why one road needs 100 lawnmowers. At the very least, it's going to reduce our landfill, right? And K, keep showing up. Community isn't built in a day. It's built in 100 little gestures, day after day after day. And it turns out that borrowing things, like a ladder, isn't just about fixing blinds. It's a thing. Psychologists call it the Ben Franklin effect. And so when you ask someone for help, they are more likely to like you, not less. Think back to when someone asked you for help. How did that make you feel? And so can you imagine what our blocks, our streets, our towns would look like if we talked more to each other, trusted, acted simply, lent and borrowed, kept showing up? That's a revolution right there. Anyway, back to my neighbour, David, and his offer of the ladder. Now, I don't know about you, but I hate being in debt to people. I start thinking, are there going to be strings attached? Are they going to think I'm a bit needy? Am I going to be that neighbour, that friend, that family member? Isn't it better if I just own all my own stuff and then I know where it all is and it's always there when I need it? But I strangely found myself saying, oh, okay, yes, thank you. I am the keeper of my neighbour's ladder. And that ring on the doorbell 7 years ago has sparked a friendship rich with banter. And maybe my opening comment needs to be expanded a little bit. I don't think it's just about knowing, being vulnerable, being courageous, and knowing whose door you can knock on to borrow their ladder. I think it's a bit more. I think it's also in every context that we find ourselves in, work, rest, play, whose ladder can we be? I am the keeper of my neighbour's ladder. Tethered, belonging, thriving, growing, giving and receiving, vulnerable and strong. And if there's one thing that you can remember from today's talk, I really hope it's this. Be brave, be vulnerable, knock on your neighbour's door, talk to them, because you might just change 2 lives that day. Thank you. Thank you.